We typically found money at the clinics, bank accounts. I will tell you, during a lot of the interviews of the doctors, I'd be like, oh, wow, you're a doctor. You must make a lot of money. And it would just, oh, well, of course, I have, a yacht down here, and I have these 6 bank accounts, and I buy cattle and all this. And I'm like, the agents are outside listening, going, did he really just say that to her?
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, well, I'm new here and I don't have a bank. So which bank was that again?
Hey, gang. Welcome back to this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. And again, we got a special guest coming on today, just like we do every week. I know you get tired of hearing me say that, but I'm just amazed at the people I can get on the show here. Today's no different. So today's guest has a very interesting background. As you recall, on episode 169, which came out on November 4th, we had Billy Matthews, who was a DEA special agent that worked in a diversion tactical squad out of Dallas and ended up in Quantico. Well, you remember when he was in Quantico, he talked about creating a more robust diversion training program, and he brought in a special person to help him run that program, and it might be that person you see on the screen next to me today. So we're going to hear some more about diversion. I think I've gotten more comments on Billy's interview than I have in quite a long time. Matt Addington, we got a lot on him, but I was kind of shocked, to be honest with you. I didn't realize there was that much interest in diversion. So today, rather than having a special agent on here, we've got a former diversion investigator, a diversion supervisor by the name of Susannah Herkert. And if I butchered your last name, Susannah, I apologize. But Susannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you very much. And there's another special thing about her that we were talking a little bit, and you folks know I'm involved with the Lost Clipper Project, which involves the disappearance of 15 Americans back in 1938 over in Micronesia in the South Pacific. And if you know anything about the story, you know that we kind of indirectly have theories that ties into the disappearance of Amelia Earhart in 1937 in the same general area. Well, our guest today is kind of a self-proclaimed expert on Amelia Earhart, has been involved with that investigation and the stories, and even has some really cool stories that we're going to talk about. So we're going to get into that today as well. In fact, look behind her. That's Amelia Earhart on the wall. And she's got some other cool pictures up there, so we might take a little tour of her little studio there as we go through this. But as you know, every week we always have a small town police blotter, and that's where we have some fun with our criminals out there. And our disclaimer, I've got to get this out here. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. We take our stories here very seriously, but we're never going to miss the opportunity to have a little fun at the expense of one of our criminals, right? So Susannah is actually in Oklahoma. I've got some good friends out there who have really supported Game of Crime. So you're in a good place out there, Susannah. Only bad part is you're an OSU and an OU supporter in the Big 12, and go Mountaineers is all I can say.
Boomer sooner.
So I think you got a story there from us from Oklahoma. I'll let you run away with it.
Absolutely. Can't wait to read this from my home state. So this story is called T-Shirt Gun Used to Blast Drugs into Prison. Yes. So an Oklahoma woman armed with $1,599 T-shirt gun, expensive, successfully launched a package of contraband over the fence of a prison. But her smuggling attempt was quickly derailed by eagle-eyed corrections officers. Police allege that Carrie Jo Hickman, name doesn't disappoint, age 40, drove Sunday morning to the North Fork Correctional Center in Sayre, Oklahoma, and used a Bleacher Reacher Pro T-shirt gun to blast a package over the fence. Now, I got to stop here for a second because this is pretty fancy. I mean, this is an expensive T-shirt gun.
You're not kidding.
No. So I grew up in Oklahoma building the potato guns, hairsprays that you burn your eyebrows off in the garage building. But this is high tech. This is a $1,500 T-shirt gun. So it says that prison personnel spotted the incoming round, which landed near a housing unit and intercepted it before the intended recipient could scoop up its contents. The package contained methamphetamine, pot, cell phones, tobacco, earbuds, chargers, and digital scales. So very sophisticated
Yeah.
to launch in a T-shirt gun. Upon seeing the container launched over the fence, corrections officers tailed the vehicle in which Hickman drove away from the medium security men's prison, which holds up to 2,500 inmates. Hickman was subsequently pulled over and arrested by Oklahoma Highway Patrol. A search of Hickman's car recovered a second package containing contraband, a T-shirt gun, which is sold at tshirtgun.com. The 7-pound gun, powered by a CO2 canister, can propel payloads up to 300 feet. So that's impressive.
Really?
Charged with introducing contraband into a correctional institution, narcotics trafficking, conspiracy, felonies. Hickman was being held in the Beckman County Jail in lieu of a $200,000 bond. She has a lengthy rap sheet with drug convictions in several Oklahoma counties. She was in state prison until her release from custody only 2 months prior to this incident.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, 300 feet, you can hit the nosebleed seats in a sports arena with those things.
Yeah, and that's impressive. Some thought went into that. Purchase that T-shirt gun. Yeah.
They did. And the one item that they recovered from the packet that she shot across the fence, I was really impressed with, was the digital scales.
Right.
Because that's what you need in prison, right?
Right. You need your digital scales. Make sure it's fair and equal. You don't short anyone.
Unbelievable. That's why we call them stupid criminals.
That's awesome.
Although you hate to give anybody credit for any of this stuff, but that is a little bit of forward thinking there, coming up with how
It's
can we
creative.
defeat the system?
Right. I mean, it does make some noise though. And at least she launched it the correct way. So they probably practiced.
Yeah.
Do some trial runs. So
And if that had been, she had a second package ready to go across the wall too, didn't she? That's crazy.
Can't
Crazy
make
stuff
it up.
here.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about our people here in Florida, which, as I tell you almost every week, sometimes I get tired of reading Florida stories just because there's so many. But today's a pretty good one. And our state's full of retirees, just like myself here. And we still like to have our sports or think we can be involved in sports. And so it seems like the new thing out there is pickleball. Let me tell you, some people take pickleball very, very seriously. So this is a domestic dispute over pickleball turned violent and resulted in the arrest of a 61-year-old Florida woman for allegedly pummeling her husband in the couple's residence in The Villages, which is a retirement community up close to Ocala. That place is very, very well known, especially on the East Coast. I'm not sure if you've ever heard it out in the Midwest, Susannah, but it has a reputation. But I mean, when you're going up the interstate, when you go through there, they've got their own bridge and a huge sign that says The Villages. It's a very well-known place. But in response to a domestic battery complaint, a police officer arrived at 1:45 a.m. And let me tell you, at my age, I try to be in bed by 10, a little bit earlier if possible. They're up at 1:45. What's wrong with these people? So anyway, they arrive at 1:45 a.m. to the Wildwood home shared by Lan Augustus and her 67-year-old spouse. Well, that's probably where the fight started. He probably was like, leave me alone, woman. I'm going to bed. But not that it was the woman's part. It wasn't the woman's fault. I'm not saying that, everybody.
No,
So don't
never.
send me hate mail. Augustus's husband told the cop that the couple got into a verbal altercation regarding a pickleball clinic that was being offered in The Villages. After exchanging words, the man said Augustus twice struck him in the face with a closed fist. All right, tough girl. He also alleged that when the argument sparked up again about an hour later, go to bed, woman, go to bed. Augustus again punched him in the face, shoved him, and struck his foot with a small metal easel. The victim said that he did not believe he suffered any serious injuries during the confrontation. A patrolman noted observing slight swelling on the man's left cheek, which was consistent with his account of the events. When she was questioned, Augustus said that the couple got into a verbal altercation regarding a pickleball membership. Augustus claimed that she only slapped her husband after he chest bumped her. Well, okay, now it's his story versus her story, right? Augustus was subsequently arrested for battery on a person over the age of 65, which is a felony in our state, all right? Don't be coming down here picking on me because I'll have you charged with picking on an old man. I threaten that with my wife all the time. She just laughs. She just laughed. She was booked into the county jail from which she was released after posting $5,000 bond. Pickleball is a racket sport played on a badminton-sized court with a 3-foot-tall net. Billed as the fastest-growing sport in the U.S., pickleball has become a favorite of seniors and retirement community residents seeking more action than a shuffleboard contest can offer. Let me tell you, in Florida, we take our pickleball seriously. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah, you're gonna screw around, somebody gonna get hurt. That's all I'm saying.
I didn't know about the over 65 battery felony. I learned something every day.
Well, we like, even though we're old, we like to think that we're not. So that's why I just got over eye surgery. I'm going to physical therapy now for a Achilles tendon injury that I still don't know how that happened. And it's like every time you turn around, something new.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for participating in that, Suzanne. I know it's silly, but it's just amazing what goes on out there, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
How we met originally, and Susannah had reminded me of this until I saw her picture. Once I saw her picture, I remember her. I used to be really good with names, and the age is affecting that a little bit, but still pretty good with memories. And as our regular listeners know, Javi and I, we now have the opportunity to go to the DEA Academy a couple times a year, and they'll bring us in where they'll have 2, 3, 4 classes of agent trainees or diversion investigator trainees or intel analysts or even state and local schools that come in. And we go and we tell the true story about Pablo Escobar and how that investigation went about. And that's where Susannah and I first met. She was still on the job back then, and just got to talk a little bit about diversion. Well, being the old man that I am, I kind of forgot about it. And through Billy Matthews, after his interview came out, he contacted me. He says, hey, if you want to know more about diversion, here's the person you need to talk to. And then he explained that through his interview, when he was talking about starting that special squad for diversion investigators in Quantico, that he wanted to bring in the best expert, the person with the most expertise and experience in diversion investigators, and that was Susannah. She's so much involved in this that she's been recognized as an expert witness in federal court. Now, that might not sound like a big deal to you. I was a cop for 38 years. I've never been recognized as an expert in anything in federal court. I mean, that's where you have to go. The defense attorneys go through a process which they call voir dire, in which they question her to see if she really knows what she's talking about. And she passed. So we got a really smart person on the show today. When I didn't bring in a knuckle dragger, I brought in a smart person today, right? Also, I want to point out that she has her master's degree, and we're going to talk about her college here in a little bit, but she has a master's degree in aviation and space science. So you know what? I'm going to call her a rocket science. She's our rocket scientist for the guest today. Is that true? I don't know. She can tell us about that later.
No, not a rocket scientist, and I don't want to take away what they do. But yes, I do have that. That's my background. That's my interest. Clearly, you can see behind me, aviation is so wide.
I love it. And that's going to lead us into, with that kind of passion, what the heck are you doing? Work for DEA. But like we do with all our guests, we'll get a little bit into your background, if you don't mind. We'll talk a little bit. If you can tell us where you grew up, what your family situation was, brothers and sisters, where you went to high school. We'll get into college and things like that. So where did you grow up, Susannah?
Sure. So I grew up in Enid, Oklahoma. Daughter of 2 school teachers.
Wow.
Older brother who spent 20 years in the Navy and as a nuclear engineer. And,
God bless it. Nuclear engineer. Holy
yes,
cow.
Yes. So both of my parents being school teachers, I think pushed kind of a desire to learn and a curiosity growing up in that kind of home environment. And then all of my grandparents were farmers in northern Oklahoma, so cattle and wheat farmers. So I grew up with just a very wholesome country, out of the earth type upbringing. Both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans and had a huge impact on my life and growing up so close to that kind of extended family. And so
nice.
Just really enjoyed growing up kind of that middle of nowhere, but, Bible Belt, Oklahoma.
Sounds like a good place. I've been to Tulsa. We've spoken at a law enforcement conference out there. We've interviewed some police officers in Oklahoma. And let me tell you, they're like New York cops. Once you're a friend for life.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love
it. Yep. So I went to school in Oklahoma. My dad was one of my high school teachers in small town America. Played sports, loved sports. I'm almost 6 feet tall. So they said, play sports. It was not even an option. So, but funny in Oklahoma, everyone's like, oh, you're so tall, you had to play sports. Well, I actually wasn't even one of the tallest on the team. It's kind of the joke, Oklahoma grown. And even being 6 feet tall as a female on basketball team, they're like, well, you're not quite tall enough to play post. So,
wow.
So grew up playing sports, love sports, really interested in that. And then, a lot into the aviation. So I got into that about 3rd grade. And then it just took off.
Wow. And just to go back a little bit, what subjects did your mom and dad teach in school?
My mom was an elementary school teacher. She taught, primarily first grade. And my dad was a high school history civics teacher.
Wow.
Yeah.
My dad at one point taught, he was a minister, but he had to have a side job to put food on the table. And he taught history in high school. I just thought, wow, he was a whole lot smarter than me. And your sports, did you play anything besides basketball?
Yeah, played volleyball, basketball, and did some track too. So I just enjoyed the sports, enjoyed the competitive nature of all of it, and loved it.
That's fantastic, especially nowadays. I mean, you see there's so many families where children are growing up without a dad, and sports is so instrumental in keeping them out of trouble and keeping them busy and giving them something to do. And just, I love the sports. I wasn't that active. I just wasn't that good. That was a problem. I wanted to be, but stupid, and I wasn't committed. I was really immature as a young kid. So, but I had parents that I did have a mom and dad just like you, and they were very involved in my life and kept me out of jail for the most part.
Exactly. Yeah.
But at 6 feet tall, and what position did you play?
So I did end up playing post, but I played point guard a lot, and just kind of use that brute strength. Everyone, I was known for drawing fouls. I think I fouled out every single game. Whoops.
She's brutal. She's brutal.
So I was a bit competitive, but as they said, I left it all on the court, and so I wanted to win, and I would die on that hill trying to win. And my parents always laughed. We're not really sure where this came from, but let's just hope it stays on the right course. So much like you, they're like, let's just stay on this path and use it for good.
Yeah. Good for you. And I'm just thinking at 6 feet tall, and in girls basketball, they don't have you playing center or forward. Holy cow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, but there were quite a few girls that were 6'2" and 6'4" on my teams.
When you went to college, did you get any kind of scholarship?
Yes, I did get some sports scholarships, and it did not end up playing in college. So originally my plan had been to go to the Citadel. And so just starting their women's sports teams. I was going to be the class of, starting in the fall of 1998. Well, they had just allowed women in the uniform. And so they were building out their sports teams. And so I wasn't good enough to play basketball at a D1 school anywhere else, but Citadel, where they only have 11 women. Hey, why not?
Yeah.
I looked into it. I went out there, started it, and then realized I wanted to focus more on aviation at that time, and then transferred to the University of Oklahoma, where I ended up graduating.
Wow. University of Oklahoma. There's a guy plays quarterback for Tampa right now that I didn't like him too much when he was in Oklahoma. Don't like him too much for it right now.
Well, he's a big football school. Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when they were a powerhouse. I mean, they were, holy cow. It's before the SEC really came on strong. But, that's got nothing to do with you. I think we both love sports. So,
yes,
especially college sport. I really love college sports.
Me too.
At the University of Oklahoma, what were you majoring in there?
I ended up getting a degree in English. I had aviation, was what I was planning to do. So I was planning on more of a commercial aviation track, and hence why I ended up getting a master's degree in aviation. But 9/11 happened while I was in college, and all civil general aviation was grounded. And so in order to graduate on time, I had to pivot because I knew the master's program that I wanted to do. So I switched and ended up getting an English degree during my sophomore year.
And then you got your master's in aviation and space science. Mm-hmm. That's interesting to hear you say that about 9/11. What that had to do with changing your college career. I never thought of that. It's amazing how it changed all our lives. And if you didn't experience certain things like I didn't experience what you went through, it's kind of interesting to hear how that did change your life.
No, it being in college when it happened, and just the change just from a small perspective, from the aviation perspective. So I had already started flying before I got to college, but all general aviation was temporarily grounded. Mm-hmm. And FBI was at the University of Oklahoma due to one of the flight schools that was there, and the students trained there. And so that flight school was shut down. And there was just a lot of activity around that time when I was in college. And I knew I still wanted to do the master's at Oklahoma State, the other university there in Oklahoma. So I had to graduate on time, and was able to do that and still continue coursework and prepare for the doctorate program.
Some of the terrorist pilots trained there in Oklahoma?
I think I don't want to speak to something I don't really completely know about, but I think it was somebody that was involved in it. Maybe not one of the hijackers, but somebody that trained with the hijackers was involved at one of the flights there in Norman, Oklahoma. And so everything was shut down. And
it's kind of scary, isn't it?
it's terrifying because I was flying before all of this happened consistently as a student. And things were very open before 9/11. You just walk out to the runway. There's no security. You just wave at the flight line and jump on a plane. And that freedom just completely changed. Of course, after 9/11, the security requirements and things that were put into place really impacted general aviation.
Yeah, my wife and I and our daughters had just moved to D.C. to Special Operations Division 3 weeks before 9/11. And where we lived was out in Ashburn in Loudoun County. And so we were very, very close to Dulles Airport. Depending on which way the wind blows, you've got planes flying right over your house at a really high altitude either. Right. But you get used to that noise fairly quickly. And when 9/11 happened, just that eerie silence of not hearing any planes. Occasionally, after a few days, you might hear a jet fighter scream by. You never saw it. It was gone before you heard the sound.
Yes.
It's just a different time in all our lives here in the United States. It's horrible what happened, but if there was a good thing that came out of it, it was that, you saw almost the entire United States band together again as one people. Absolutely. The patriotism and the pride that came out. There were American flags hanging off the bridges on the Dulles Toll Road everywhere you went. We all had flags attached to the antennas on our cars. Just really brought back a national pride that, and since then, we've lost. It's
exactly.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But that's kind of on the side there. I want to ask you too, when did you get your pilot's license and what was your attraction to aviation? How did that come about?
Yes. It kind of started in third grade. I was reading a book as part of a research project, a family genealogy book, and it said, your mom's side of the family, Earharts, and just a relative was Amelia Earhart. And as a third grader, it's like, oh, that's really neat. I know who that is. Yeah. And it started kind of this interest in Amelia Earhart and then mystery surrounding Amelia Earhart. And, this was back in late 80s, early 90s. And there were still a lot of people, not a lot, but there was a group of people alive that were around Amelia Earhart. So a mechanic, a personal photographer. So I joined all of these Amelia Earhart societies and clubs with all these 80-year-old men who just took me in as almost like this just little kid who just followed them around and wanted to know everything they knew, and they really just kind of adopted me into their kind of men's garden club for Amelia Earhart. And it was just a great experience. But it was through that mentorship. A lot of them were pilots. A lot of them had background as veterans, and their shared experiences and what they mentored me in and send me in the mail, these aviation books, just really fostered that interest from a very early age. And I stayed in contact with all of them until most of them passed when I was in college. And so it was just a great, they just invested so much in me around aviation and that interest. So it started very early, became a true obsession. I joke that, once I got into the government, I filed my first Freedom of Information Act when I was in 5th grade. They shared a lot of, how they did their research, and I was like, I can do this. So I would always ask my parents for a roll of stamps for the holiday, and they had no idea what I was up to, but I would send member information requests to FBI, to the Navy, to everyone to get as much as I could about Amelia Earhart. So I set up my own office at 11 and I was ready to go.
Look at that. So there were FOIA requests. Did you get anything juicy?
Yes. I got some great documents from FBI, and some were redacted, some weren't, but it just further propelled. And so I would write to authors. I had probably a collection of 50 books from Amelia Earhart authors from across the world. So I would just send them letters randomly, get that publishing company's address and just send them letters and ask them questions. And I really amassed quite the Amelia Earhart collection from a very early age, to which my parents were like, do we need a storage unit for this? Like, what are we doing here? But that's kind of how the aviation started. And then I begged my parents to let me fly. And they said, tell you what, you finish ground school, you pay for it, you do ground school, then we'll let you start taking the actual flying lessons. So I did ground school at age 13. They took me to the airport and let me sit in the class. And Of course, the instructor was like, she can try it, but most people don't do this till they're older. But they let me do it. And I finished ground school, and then my parents had to keep their end of the deal. Mm-hmm. And they said, great, if you want to take flying lessons, but you have to pay for it. So flying lessons pretty expensive for a 14-year-old. And I got a job at the airport basically as a grease monkey. They let me scrub bugs off planes, take the oil off. I worked on the line refueling planes, and they let me trade hours that I worked for fuel for the plane. And same thing with instruction. So I worked and got my license when I was 17.
Wow. That's impressive. I took, as a young police officer back in the 70s, my buddy and I, we took flying lessons. And I was doing okay with it until they took us up in the train, or took me up in the trainer to teach me how to come out of a spin. And you go up at the plane in the stall, you tip over and start your spin.
Yep.
And just before we did it, the guy said, now don't spin more than 3 times, because in this train it'll rip the wings off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what? Didn't you think to tell me that before? And he's right there with you. I mean, he's not going to let that happen, but it scared the crap out of me. I tell you what, it really did. That's one of the scariest things I think I ever went through. That was the last lesson I ever took.
That was the end of that.
Oh my gosh. I can kick doors and all that kind of stuff that you do in law enforcement, but that was just, that did it for me. My buddy, he went on, he got his license, left the police department, went to work as a commercial airline pilot, ended up being an executive with American Airlines.
Oh, wow.
So he did well for himself.
Oh,
but that was enough for me. I'll tell you. It really was.
But you got to try it. You experienced it. So
yeah. I realized I'd go be a cop, because that's what I like to do. When these old guys, did they talk about any of the conspiracy theories surrounding Amelia Earhart? Was she kidnapped by the Japanese? Did she crash in the ocean and disappear? What do you remember about some of those stories?
All of them had their own kind of theory. And what was great is they all, spent time and letters and research trying to convince me of theirs, right? And so I had information, everything from, she was and she was captured by the Japanese and held in the Marshall Islands, and then, held in an internment camp until she was brought back to the United States after World War II, and then was given a different identity. So that was a real popular theory in the 1980s from Joe Class and Joe Jervis. And then there's the theories that, she simply ran out of fuel and crashed in the ocean, and that was it. And Tiger, the International Historic Aircraft Recovery Group, they spent a lot of time looking for her plane. And then some of the other theories were that she was executed, on the island. Buddy Brennan wrote the eyewitness to the execution, and really gives a great theory around how she was captured and held and ultimately executed with Fred Noonan during World War II. But there's just so much evidence that points to, in my opinion, it was more than just she ran out of fuel. From her rescheduling her round the world flight to so many different things that happened leading up to her around the world flight, that I think it was absolutely there was a plan. She was led the way, I think, for some of the things that were going on in a war. So,
especially as a female, which I'm guessing they may have thought that might be less suspicious.
Absolutely, and she was America's sweetheart. You know? And
she was very tight with Eleanor Roosevelt.
Absolutely. Flew with Eleanor Roosevelt, and a lot of what she was doing made sense. And so installing cameras on her plane, doing the different things that happened before her around the world flight, it all made sense.
Yeah, and what I'm looking for here is I've got my list of prior interviews up. I'm trying to find the interview number that you would probably be interested in, of Guy Knopfsinger, who is kind of like the head of our little investigative group on the Hawaiian Clipper adventure. And of course, when I'm looking for things, I can never seem to find them. And I will get that for you maybe when we finish here. But he was Naval Intelligence for 20 retired as Naval Intelligence officer. When he was going through Staff Command College, he did his thesis on the disappearance of the Lost Clipper.
Oh, wow.
And he's one of the most foremost authorities I've ever heard talk about this topic. And our theories I can't find it, so maybe I can find it later. But our theory kind of centers around that she was kidnapped taken hostage by the Japanese military. But there's also evidence of, and you're probably familiar with this, where some of these planes that were flying over the ocean would carry what they call heavy oil. And so that if they had to crash land, they would come in and they would drop this heavy oil, which could calm the seas in that little path of oil for a certain amount of time to kind of give them a smoother landing to, circle back around and try to land on the ocean. and they found reports of a naval ship going out there testing the water, and there was a smell of gas and different things going on. There's so many theories on this. It's just amazing. But
Yes.
and I just, to our listeners, I'm sorry we get off on the tangent here, but this is really interesting stuff.
Yes, it is.
I love the fact that you're involved with it. What's that picture next to Amelia Earhart? Looks like a bunch of aviators.
Yes, that's, if I touch my camera, I'm afraid it'll go off, but that's Flying Tigers with a P-51 Mustang. And that's an actual World War II print.
Wow.
That I have up there. So
this is so interesting. I might have to introduce you to the guy, because you guys probably spend hours and hours on the Zoom or whatever, comparing notes, and it's amazing what you might come up with.
Oh, absolutely.
So anyway, so you let's see, you also participated with the Civil Air Patrol, right?
Mm-hmm.
For a number of years, like 17 years.
Yes, I joined Civil Air Patrol at age 14 as well when I was doing the aviation. And so Civil Air Patrol was another way to help with flying. As a cadet, it's an auxiliary of the Air Force. And so it's a volunteer organization, but you do civilian search and rescue. And they have a great youth program. It's just not real highly publicized, but you can get a certain number of flights for free. And so I was able to work with instructor pilots, because Enid, Oklahoma is the home of Vance Air Force Base. There's a lot of Air Force pilots. And so they were the adult members in Civil Air Patrol, and their time is volunteer. And so I was able to get flying time as a cadet in that program for free. So I was always looking for ways to build those hours, because obviously the expense of flying, and I couldn't have a legal job at age 14 yet, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of options in order to get those flying hours I needed to get that license. And Civil Air Patrol was great.
I think I saw you got up to the rank of, was it major?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was in it as a cadet, and I ran my squadron there in Enid as a senior in high school, and did the junior ROTC. Was a group commander there. And it was just a great way to learn leadership, teamwork, all the military values that were just so important to learn at that age, combined with the sports. And then as an adult, because I had so many of these volunteer adults that invested in me, it just seemed like the natural progression to, once I was in college, transition to an adult volunteer in the program and work with the youth in that role. So I've done that for years as well.
Excellent. I tell you what, you were very focused as a kid.
Yes. Yeah, probably a little too focused sometimes.
Well, I don't know. It's I think that's having an objective at that young age, and having that maturity and responsibility to follow through with it. I certainly didn't have that.
Well, I wasn't completely responsible, because I did get my motorcycle license at age 14, and to do some damage on a XD9 potty that my older brother rebuilt. But so there wasn't always responsible decisions, but yeah.
Well, you got to have, I was going to say you got to have some adventure, but you've already got a lot of adventure in your life. Do you still maintain your ratings and still have your pilot's license?
It's not as much. I still have flown, but, as life goes on and things happen, and you have to grow up and get a real job, as I've told people, that haven't kept up with it as much, but it's still an interest and still something I love to do. Yeah.
And so before you got into being a DEA Diversion Investigator, you were an adjunct professor. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. While I was finishing up the master's program, they offered me a position through the NASA Aerospace Education Services program to teach some aviation courses there at Oklahoma State. So that was a great chance to, start instructing and kind of get that experience doing those lectures and teaching. And so I did that for about 2 years before DEA.
Talk about an overachiever. Holy cow. Well, that's why I'm calling you a rocket scientist here. You got all the connections. And then on top of everything else, you're a PADI certified open water diver, right? Mm-hmm. Are you an instructor with that also?
No, just another hobby. Skydiving, scuba diving, planes, a bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, me too, but I'm not jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. Not voluntarily anyway.
You got to do it just once. I don't know if it's something you need to do all the time, but just once, because there's nothing better than that 60-second free fall before your parachute launches. There's just nothing like it.
I don't think so. If you try to talk me into that, I'm going to think you've been conspiring with my wife hey, he's worth more dead than he is alive. Split it with you. I got to watch her all the time. She's a mean woman.
That's an exemption in insurance. I think that's actually an exemption on my insurance, because I have so many of those high-risk categories. Your wife, I want to look into that.
I don't know. She'll probably poison me with some of the stuff we're getting ready to talk about from the diversion. So I don't know that I want her to listen to your episode because we're going to talk about some good cases here. All right. So now, where did the law enforcement bug come from, and how did you decide on DEA, and how did you decide on diversion?
See, it was just an accident almost. I will say, as we talked about 9/11, that kind of sparked the interest in, the law enforcement and the investigations. But that investigation bug, I think, was always in me from my Amelia Earhart kind of investigative pseudo experience as a child. And so when I was looking at different things, and my plan had been to go into the doctoral program in aviation, I needed at some point to start making a living, right?
Right.
Scholarships were running out, and there were only so many things I could do to pay tuition. And so I started looking, and I applied for CIA, I applied for DEA. But what caught my attention with DEA was the white collar diversion investigation. And I didn't do a whole lot of research at all. To be perfectly honest, had really no idea what I was applying for.
Mm-hmm.
And I had completely forgotten I had applied for it. And DEA called randomly, like 18 months later. It's like, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this. And I was like, what is this again? And it was the timing, because I had just finished teaching that semester, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do that next semester. And they're like, hey, we have a class starting February 4th. Would you like to come? And I'm like, why not? Let's do it.
Now, how much advance notice did you get?
About a month. So it wasn't like be there Monday. I had a little bit of notice, was able to give my notice to my job. And I thought, let's just try this and see what happens. And I kind of thought I'd do it for a year or two,
Mm-hmm.
and then go back to aviation, jump back into the doctoral program, and head that route. But man, did I have a blast.
Yeah.
And really never looked back. And then 15 years flew by.
Time flies when you're having fun, right? Is anybody in your family associated with law enforcement?
No. My parents, nobody had a law enforcement career. And so it was just one of those. My dad always said, hey, I always kind of thought you might find out about law enforcement and head that, direction. We were kind of holding our breath. And I was like, why didn't you ever tell me? This is a perfect fit. But I didn't really, do any of the research on special agent diversion investigator. I just, the white collar caught my eye. And, I thought, let's try it. And I'd had an incredibly lucky career in that I got assigned to a tactical diversion squad right out of the academy, which is unusual for a diversion investigator.
Well, before we get to your first post here, how long was your academy?
12 weeks, maybe 13.
And that's at Quantico?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, like when agents go through, if we do things that the instructors don't like, they make us write memos. Did you ever have to write a memo?
I think they may have encouraged me to write a memo at one point, and I think I pushed back because I was like, I'm not sure you guys are right about this, and I can prove it. No, so.
And they back down?
Yeah, a little bit. But diversion's a little different. Diversion doesn't have the same requirements as agent. There's no running. There's no, you have to run 7 miles if you don't do something. We don't do firearm training. So diversion's focus is more academic, and that everything's the law, the pharmaceutical controlled substances, how to audit, the different types of DEA registrants, very book intensive.
Mm-hmm. Well, they eventually got to where some diversion investigators were carrying and still are carrying weapons. I'm going to guess you weren't one of them.
So they did the conversion. They were going to do the 1830 is what they called it. So diversion investigators are 1801s and agents are 1811s. They were going to do the 1830. So I signed up for that and started, doing that. And then they
said,
how
did I know that?
Well, I was like,
how did I know you would do that?
Yes, let's do it. And so I was in Los Angeles when that came out, and I was like, okay, great. This sounds like the perfect world, right? I get to combine everything. And then they were like, well, you're not going to be assigned to a TDS or a tactical diversion when you come out. You're going to get assigned to a Southwest Florida or something else. Like, no one's going to assign you back to a tactical diversion. I was like, well, I only want to do a white collar. This is my interest. I want to go after the doctors and pharmacists and everyone in these positions of trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to do. And they said, well, that's not going to happen if you convert. And so I put the brakes on it and said that I'm going to dig my heels in, and I'm just going to stay as a diversion investigator and tactical diversion.
And that's what what you just said there is the reason I think most people go into a law enforcement field, whether it's carrying a gun or not, is that you want to go into go after those people who are in a position of trust, and they've betrayed the public's trust. I mean, that explains the whole thing right there. I tell everybody frequently that it doesn't matter. You can be the administrator of DEA. You can be the president of the United States. you're still a public servant.
Absolutely.
And you're serving the public. And I think there's no greater calling. Military, they're serving the citizens of our country. First responders do the same thing. So I love that you and everybody. I didn't prompt that. That was very spontaneous on her part. But I kind of preach that because it's. I think it's just one of the most admirable occupations and careers that you can ever have is where you're serving your fellow man. So I'm glad you said that. Was there anything in the academy that went on that sticks out that this was a little unusual? Did you have any run-ins with anybody? Did you beat anybody at basketball?
Well, a little bit competitive. So if you haven't noticed, and the academy was not very challenging, I will say, in the sense that having gone through a lot of the preparation for military academies and certain things when I didn't know for sure what I was going to do for college, showing up and just, taking a test once a week, and you don't get up early and run. Like there's nothing, really other than focusing on the test. I was like, well, okay, this is, okay, we'll get through this. Well, there became a competition in our class on who could finish their tests first, right? And these are basic auditing tests, right? So you're doing a little bit of, long division, some percentages, right? And so once I figured out there was a little bit of competition going on, then it was like game on, right? So I had to finish all of my tests as quickly as possible. And I may have winked at a colleague who was super competitive, like, hey, I just beat you again. And he jumped up and got a little upset in the class. And so he ended up having to, I think, write a memo because he's like, well, Susannah winked at me. And that's why, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I just finished my test first. So there's some healthy competition, and I still talk to these individuals that were in my basic diversion class. But it was all in good fun. But that's how we retained ourselves.
Well, I mean, it does get a little tedious and boring in some of those classes. Even the agent classes, sitting there all those hours, and so you got to come up with something to keep you entertained.
Exactly. But it was a great experience. Like I learned a lot.
What office did you hire on to DEA through?
So I interviewed out of the Oklahoma City office. And didn't think my interview went well because they were like, have you quit your current job? Are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, yes, I do. This sounds really interesting. But hired out of the Oklahoma City office, but then the first office I was assigned to was Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So Oklahoma girl dropped straight off the turnip truck into Los Angeles.
It's kind of like the girl Penny on Big Bang Theory coming out of Nebraska, ended up out in Hollywood or Los Angeles.
Yes. So they dropped me off there. And I will say that I was the first tactical diversion I was on, there were some agents that were the 1980s special agents near the end of their career. And boy, did I luck out because I got assigned to them and they're looking at me going, you're from where? Okay. And
literally, okay.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. You're from Oklahoma and you're a diversion investigator, which we really don't know what that is. And this is when they were first forming Tactical Diversion Squads. Mm-hmm. And so I don't really know what to do with you, but just get in the back of the car and don't say anything. And I learned so much from keeping my mouth shut most of the time. And just watching and taking it all in from these, what I call the old school DEA agents that just took me in. And I think now that I said that out loud, it's that mentorship that I've had from Amelia Earhart mentors and then these agents that just took me under their wing and put up with me not knowing anything. And they still call me every now and then and say, hey, Susannah, have you seen any cars with a peace symbol? So we were on our first surveillance out there and I'm in the back seat. I go, no, he got in the car with the peace symbol. And they're like, what are you talking about? And so I started learning Mercedes and BMW and the different cars. Yeah.
Little inside joke.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were going through the academy, did you get to fill out a wish list where you wanted to be stationed?
No. It's just the needs of the agency. And so that's how it works.
Yeah. We get to fill them out, but that doesn't mean anything really. They're going to send you where they want to send you.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know what?
And I remember being terrified. They said Los Angeles was my first assignment because I'd never been there. I'd rarely been out of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But my counselor at Quantico said, that's the best place to start your career. You'll learn so much there. And he said, just stick it out. Try it for a year.
And I grew up in small town Tennessee, small town West Virginia, and got stationed in Miami in 1987. I mean, talk about a fish out of water, very similar to what you did, intimidated. Most of the population down there spoke Spanish and very little English. It was an adjustment for Connie and I both. But but you're right. The experience you get, you can't parallel that. You certainly can't equal it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And that's what, just it sticks with you your whole career. It kind of sets that work ethic and what it's expected and what you can accomplish when you apply yourself.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, and so you joined DEA in 2005?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Go to LA, and rather than going in a regular diversion group, you said you went into a tactical diversion squad. So, and Billy told us about it, but just refresh everybody's memory. What is a tactical diversion squad in DEA?
This tactical diversion squads, DEA started, building kind of when the opioid crisis started. And in the early 2000s, that's when they were just getting a few of them set up across the country. And that's where you have a combination of special agents, diversion investigators, locals that are task force officers on that group. And you're all together charged with going after those white collar, going after those organizations that are illicitly distributing pharmaceutical controlled substances. And so it was just starting, back then. And so this Los Angeles first tactical diversion squad was formed in 2005. And I got to be one of the first, diversion investigators on it. And, they assigned Mark Nomadi, who was my mentor, Dwayne Stickles, and some great agents there from Orange County that were the original tactical diversion squad agents.
Who was the special agent in charge back in LA back at that time?
Gosh, back then it would have been Ralph Partridge. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, good old friend, good friend. Yeah. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Loved him to death. And it just hit me. For those who haven't heard Billy's interview, can you just explain for the listeners and give us the Reader's Digest version of what diversion is? What does that mean? What are your responsibilities?
Yeah, diversion is a part of DEA where you're tasked with the prevention, detection, and investigation of illicit controlled substances that are diverted into illicit markets. There are manufacturers, distributors, pharmacies that have a legitimate reason to have controlled substances. And that's what the United States Code and Code of Federal Regulations set up, that there's a legitimate need for these controlled substances. But when they're diverted outside of those legitimate channels, that's when diversion happens. So when they're sold on the street, they're sold out of hospitals, things like that, that's when diversion happens. And that's what diversion investigators work with investigating.
Mm-hmm. Very good. It's I've worked with a few diversion investigators. I really didn't know any until I came out of Columbia and got stationed in Greensboro, North Carolina. We had a diversion squad there. Not a squad, we had a diversion group. This was back before the tactical diversion squads started. And you learn quickly. I mean, a lot of those investigators were as adept, if not more qualified, to do investigations than a lot of the agents I worked with. We had our slugs just like everybody else. But if you got into a case like that, you wanted those folks with you. Yeah, because, what the heck do I know about pharmaceuticals and how you track the auditing process and all the things that you do? Let's just say math wasn't my forte. It's funny because in high school, I could get by in math. When I got to college, I think I finally got a professor that could explain algebra to me so that I could understand it. And it kind of took off at that point.
Makes all the difference on
it does.
who your teacher
really
is.
Does. It really does. Now, you're in LA from 05 to 10, is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so what kind of cases are you working? Any notable cases, any big name cases? We've all heard about Michael Jackson and Anna Nicole Smith and Prince and things like that.
Yes.
So give us an idea of what you were doing out there.
Sure. So during that time frame, that's when there were a lot of celebrity overdose deaths related to pharmaceuticals. DEA, in conjunction with LAPD, LAXO, and everyone, we worked those investigations on the Michael Jackson death, Anna Nicole Smith, and other celebrities. At the time, it was a lot of resources in my mind that were devoted to these one overdose deaths. And we had a lot of overdose deaths going on at this time with pill type clinics. And so, but I started to see the impact of the attention around these cases. When Michael Jackson passed away, when Anna Nicole Smith, everyone started paying attention to what is propofol? What are benzodiazepines? What are these drugs? And why are they so dangerous? And so when the celebrities, when people see, a celebrity can pass away, you think of them as invincible, right?
Yeah.
Due to these controlled substances, it really put an important spotlight on these cases. And after those and during those, we saw a traction with the U.S. Attorney's Office and being able to put more of these cases together in that office because it just got so much worldwide attention. But yeah, we spent a lot of time. So I always say I started out my career in Los Angeles and I was temporary duty or TDY in Las Vegas, because that's where Michael Jackson's doctors, one of his clinics and his residence was. And so I was like, well, this is the best job ever. I'm temporary duty in Las Vegas, staying in hotels, serving search warrants on pharmacies related to celebrities. And it was just a very fast paced, every day interesting. And then I was like, okay, not every DEA investigation is going to be like this. There's going to be some mundane days, but it was really just a great way to get exposed to so many investigative techniques and the whole process, because these cases go to trial. A lot of them do. And so I really got to learn from these agents who were like, okay, kid, you can do the evidence. Hey, you can do all this. And let me learn every aspect from opening a criminal case to processing the evidence until all the way through trial in Los Angeles. So it really was a great exposure.
Oh yeah, what a great learning experience just to learn the whole judicial system and as I mentioned here at the beginning, I mean, it got to the point where you eventually became recognized as an expert witness in diversion cases, which is phenomenal. I think you may be the first person I've ever met that was considered an expert witness in a diversion case. I've met other folks that have been, experts in other areas, but I think you're the first in diversion. I did a little reading on the Michael Jackson case, and that was, I think Anna Nicole Smith was first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Michael Jackson was in 2009. So you're in LA, and I read where obviously LAPD responded first, and then they brought in DEA to help further up the investigation. Were you directly involved in any of that?
Yes, our Tactical Diversion Squad was involved in that. There were pharmacies that were involved, and we did an administrative inspection warrant, which is different than a search warrant, but it just says, hey, you're a DEA registrant and you're subject to inspections. And so administrative inspection warrants were signed by judges, and we went out and did an administrative inspection warrant at pharmacies who filled the prescriptions associated with the Michael Jackson case. There was paparazzi everywhere. I mean, it was a crazy time, but it really shed a lot of light on the work of diversion.
Yeah. Well, and for those that don't know, what is a DEA registrant?
DEA registrant is anyone who's authorized by law to manufacture, dispense, administer controlled substances. That's going to be a doctor, pharmacy, distributor, hospital. They're authorized by law to have controlled substances.
And if you've ever, I don't know that they even write prescriptions out anymore because everything's done electronically, but if you do, you'll see that if it's a doctor or whoever is writing your script, if you look on the prescription pad, it'll have a DEA number on there, and that's what that is. If they don't have that registrant number, they're violating the law here in the United States, which is, I think what Billy said, there's over 2 million registrants.
Yes, there's over 2 million registrants, and usually only about 600 to 700 diversion investigators. So the odds are not in our favor on that. And so that's why, especially in Los Angeles, we had to be very strategic in the cases that we were working in the time that was invested, because there were so many overdose deaths related to pill mills that getting to them and making sure those families had that justice. Yeah, we really had to look at it.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about the pill mills here in a few minutes, but on the Michael Jackson case, you had told me that a lot of that case was sealed by the courts.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't his personal physician, I think, was eventually convicted?
Yes. Yeah. Dr. Murray, they had, a lot of that out of Houston. But I think in all of the celebrity cases, Michael Jackson and Cole Smith, there's a lot of individuals around them that enable what's going on. And DEA has very specific requirements about prescriptions and what you can do. And I was surprised in all of the celebrity type cases, how many people thought that there was some kind of celebrityism. And I'm like, and I remember going, okay, yeah, let's pull up the Code of Federal Regulations. Where's that at? Yeah. Is that under Section 1300 that it doesn't apply? And so it's interesting, but I think that's, not just in pharmaceuticals, but in culture that, those that are around the celebrities want to provide things and be in that close knit circle. And sometimes it leads to their untimely death, which is sad.
Well, when I was reading up on this and the day that Michael Jackson passed, it seemed like that Dr. Murray, I think you said his name is, that he was administering multiple different types of, of medications. And if somebody's having trouble sleeping, and I mean, you think about Michael Jackson's life, the publicity, the concerts, the travel, the media pressure on him, you could see where somebody like that would have trouble sleeping. But rather
Absolutely.
than trying to correct that through medication, why not get some counseling? You
Oh,
know,
absolutely.
I just, especially synthetic drugs, just, my doctor just, so I went for my yearly checkup this year, just a few weeks ago, and they got the blood test back, and my bad cholesterol is higher than it should be, which is, when you eat chips every night, that's going to happen, right? And, Southern boy, fried food, I'm Southern all the way.
Fried okra.
Yeah, I love that. And I haven't had it in years. I'm trying to do better, but they put me on Crestor, and it's the smallest dose you can get. And the pill is just tiny. I mean, if you're not careful, you'll drop it on the floor and then you can't find it, especially with my bad eyes, hence the eye surgery, right?
Right.
But it just kills me to take a pill. I just told the doctor I'll try it for a while. And if it comes down, then I want to handle that through a changed diet, take better care of myself. I just don't like taking pills. I have my surgeries. I don't like taking pain pills. If I get on an extra strength Tylenol, that's what I'm going to do. So the whole point of saying that, it's not about me. It's the fact that these people think that you can, better living through better chemistry type thing. We used to joke about that, but a lot of people believe that, don't they?
It's what you said just resonated so much, because it's one of the things that, you testify about and talk about is, these pill mills and celebrity cases, everybody wants to immediately go towards pill fix, right? Let's put a pill, let's put medication on to fix it. Well, have we tried more conservative therapies first? Have we tried exercise? Have we tried counseling? Have we tried crutches and physical therapy and all of these things? Because the pill mills and these illicit doctors, and it's a very small percentage of them, just immediately go towards, we're going to give you the high-powered painkiller, and then you have the overdoses, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what you said, just absolutely so true. And it's an American problem, right? One of our trainings we go through and we discuss is, over 97% of the hydrocodone is used in the United States.
Yeah.
Right. It's not a worldwide problem. And so that gets back to what you're saying. It's that culture. It's that pill culture of let's just take a pill instead of getting to the underlying issue. Unbelievable.
I've got some friends in England that have told me when you have surgery, your pain medication is extra strength Tylenol. I've had several surgeries I think I'm paying for all the fun I had as a DEA agent now later in life. You think you're Superman, and now you're realizing, it really wasn't.
Right.
But I've talked to my ortho surgeons before surgery and told them, don't give me a prescription for 60 or 90 pain pills, whatever they're going to be.
Right.
And Percocet seems to be very popular. And explained to them why, and they were very gracious and they listened to me. And after surgery, they hand me a script or they give it to my wife, and she said, yeah, they did it again. You got 60 Percocets coming.
Right.
And I'm telling the guy, give me 10. If I need more, I'll call you.
Right.
And the truth is, I don't think I've ever taken more than 5. I think my knee surgery is probably the most I ever had. A knee replacement a couple of years ago, but I just don't like it. Like it.
Well, it's not to take away that there are people that legitimately need them, that have tried all of the conservative, options, and they legitimately need, an opioid or something to relieve that and have that standard of living. Yep. But when it's the go-to, like the immediate, not trying other options first, that's where the concern comes out. I'm not trying to play a doctor on TV because I'm the farthest thing from a doctor. I always say I'm not playing a doctor on TV, but this is just from my experience as a diversion investigator.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's absolutely right. You mentioned, is it propofol?
Propofol.
And is that a pain medication?
No, propofol is something they use to put you under when you have surgeries. But it's an anesthesia and it's something that we see diverted. It's not a controlled substance, so DEA doesn't control it. But it's something that we see is diverted. It's used typically in procedures, so a lot of it's in the hospital space. That was involved in the Michael Jackson case. And so propofol is something that we continuously see out there. And it's been proposed as a controlled substance, but it's still not.
When Dr. Murray was convicted, do you remember what he was convicted of?
I don't recall the exact charge. It was out of Houston. I don't remember. It was a state charge. Ultimately, they got.
Yeah, and I had read about it, but I don't have it pulled up here now. But did he go through trial or did he plead guilty?
I think he had a trial, but I know that there were separate charges, but I think he did go through a trial.
Yeah, because I just pulled up real quickly here that Michael Jackson's death was ruled a homicide, which takes it in a whole different direction.
Yep.
I don't want to waste time on that. The guy, he took a Hippocratic oath. I mean, we took oaths, protect human life and property. He took his and he violated his oath. So put him under the jail.
And the pharmacies too that fill these prescriptions. And I think, the doctor is absolutely in the position of trust, but it's a 50-50. Somebody has to fill that prescription too. And so a pharmacist, that is willing to fill these prescriptions too.
Yep. So we've been going about an hour now, and we're going to bring Susannah back here for part 2. I want to get into the pill mills, the other things that she's been involved with, what she's doing now. I mean, this lady, if you're looking for a role model, you might be looking at her here on the screen, and it's not me. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us for episode 1 here with Susannah Herkert, and join us tomorrow for episode 2. Hey players, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, just a reminder that Game of Crimes is now posting interview videos on YouTube. You can find those at Game of Crimes Podcast. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com, where you'll find all our episodes, our guests' book list, merchandise, and more. And for more content, join us on patreon.com/gameofcrimes. I have several monthly episodes that range from silly to serious, so come on over and join the fun. In the meantime, everyone stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow for part 2.